Yo, parish orphans and retrogrades. Just 4 days after Pope Francis stunned the world and impressed the conservative faithful Christian world by saying "Frociagine," which was sort of based, if it wasn't Peronism. He announces 3 appointments to the cardinalate. Those appointments directly contradict the idea being peddled by many that Francis hates Frociagine. Basta Frociagine. Abbiamo bisogno di superare Frociagine. Yeah, I mean, Pope Francis wants to overcome Frociagine in the seminaries. This is not the way to do it. These 3 appointments, reported here on Twitter by Sir Edward Penton. I know he's not legitimately a sir, but I always say he's Obi-Wan Kenobi. Just, when did Ed Penton? Yeah, he did this on June the 1st, this tweet. And the appointments had been made the day before, of Cardinal Jose Tolentino de Mendoza, Cardinal Marcelo Semeraro, and Archbishop Bruno Forte. Oh, wow. I overlooked the fact that one of these was Bruno Forte of the Synod on the Family infamy. Well, this contradicts everything that Pope-splainers were trying to say in favor of Francis, just because he's a Peronist who knows how to play the left and the right, and he says words that excite the right, yours included. I love words like Frociagine. But I didn't fall, unlike most of the rest of the Pope-splaining right, I didn't fall for it. I did a show last week. It was, in some sense, the only new show that I did last week, the only non-recorded show, Francis on Doublespeak. And I talked about how it was, as a matter of fact, doublespeak for Pope Francis, who had recently promulgated Fiducia Supplicans for the first time in Catholic Christian history, allowing, permitting the blessings of 2 Homo sapiens at the same time. It was very strange for him to say enough Frociagine, basta Frociagine, in the seminaries. And I didn't buy it. This was Peronist doublespeak. Well, literally on the day, June 1st, 2 days ago, Ed Penton posted this on Twitter. Pope Francis today appointed the following 3 prelates as members of the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith. All have defended the church's moral teaching in marriage between a man and a woman. This just means that they say, well, it can't be sacramental marriage unless it's between one man and one woman. That's not a big deal. That's a workaround obstacle for them. They just say, we'll work around that. Same thing with a woman can't be an ordained deacon. I told you this last summer, before the 2023 October Synod. I said, this is a workaround block for them. They'll just reduplicate the sacrament and say it's non-sacramental. So he says, however, Cardinal Jose Tolentino de Mendoza, prefect of the Dicastery for Culture and Education, served for some years as rector, don't make too much of that, of the Capella Dorato, a private chapel in Lisbon, known for ministering to Homo sapiens, whom he said he doesn't judge. Ed Penton then links to a Register article, NC Register. The cardinal has also been a supporter of Maria Teresa Forçades y Vila, whatever that is, a former religious sister famous for advocating queer theology. I thought they didn't like that word, the people who are queer. And wrote a preface to one of her books. He links to a 1 Peter 5 article. I think I've gone to 1 Peter 5's weblog like 3 or 4 times since poor Steve Skojek left. Steve did a good job when he ran that outfit before he lost his mind. He really did that a bang up job running 1 Peter 5, and he's the founder. The second cardinal is Marcello Semeraro. Oh, he's Italian, so it's Marcello. Prefect of the Dicastery of the Causes of the Saints, has reportedly turned his diocese into the Italian capital of the Catholic Jihad movement, annually hosting the Forum of Italian LGBTLMNOPQRSTUVWXYZ Christians, a group seeking to make Homo sapienism fully accepted inside the church. He, Cardinal Marcello Semeraro, also wrote the foreword to a book by an Italian priest entitled Possible Love, Homo Sapien Persons and Christian Morality. That sounds titillating. But not, because it's about love between two men, right? Sorry. And has supported legal recognition of Homo sapien civil unions, linking to a New Daily Compass article. The third pro-Homo sapien nomination, Homo sapienist nomination by Francis, who we all were being led to believe hated Frocagine, is Archbishop Bruno Forte of Chieti Vasto in Italy, was responsible for sections on Homo sapienism in the controversial interim document of the First Synod on the Family in 2014. See, I got a memory on me. Those controversial interim documents attempted to open the door to acceptance of Homo sapien relations in the church. He cites a BBC article. Penton's the best. He always cites what he's got, brings the receipts. A man after my own heart. And specifically, that attempt informed a line in one of the relatio documents, the midterm report documents, that said, we have to acknowledge the positive aspects or elements in Homo sapien relationships. He, Bruno Forte, has been a prominent voice, a forte, una voce forte, advocating for more inclusion and respect for Homo sapienism and Homo sapien rights within the church. He cites La Stampa. And then we have pictures of these fantastic gentlemen. Look at these guys. Oh, just in. Let's see. Vatican publishes Pope Francis's preface to the Italian version of James Martin's book, Come Forth. Gross. Released tomorrow. Quote, we should be very grateful to Father James Martin, whose other writings I also know and appreciate in the for this new book of his. So Pope Francis, okay, so that's more Homo sapien news. Pope Francis is appreciative to James Martin, Homo sapienist. What? You're a naughty pet. James Martin writing books, publishing, globe-trotting around the globe, finding all the mans and talking to them. Sorry, someone said in the audience last time that James Martin FJ said that I'm too good at that. It's too easy an accent to do.
All boys in the 90s knew how to do that accent well.
The Homo sapien accent and like a poo. No.
The Hasapina
The Hasapima Pedalon. Everyone knows how to do a Quickie Mart voice and a Homo sapien voice. So, so Frank, that's just breaking right now. Michael Haynes reported that on Twitter. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael Haynes. News on James Martin S.J. And then these three cardinals, Jose Tolentino de Malanda, whatever his name is, Cardinal Marcello Semerara, and Archbishop Bruno Forte. These guys all love the man's, at least the man's rights. That's all I'm saying. They love the man's rights. The man's rights for loving one another. And Pope Francis is all for it. He just nominated them. This is Peronism at its finest. You say something that the right will cheer for as you usher in leftist causes. Juan Perón couldn't have done it better himself, and Francis learned how to rule as a sovereign from Juan Perón. All these funny Hispanic names. No offense, guys, but it's just funny. Yeah, talking to the Hispanic in the room. In my own defense, half Hispanic. You're just half Hispanic. Okay, so let us say this much. Michael Haynes just reported more Peronism because Pope Francis has written a back of the book blurb for James Martin in praise of his work. His work is monolithically pro-Homo sapien. That's why we know this bald goon, James Martin. He's a naughty pet. And so we'll talk a little bit about these three guys. I'll read a little bit from the three articles involving each of these nominees in a second. But first, I want to have a word with you about my goal, my personal goal for this channel being the most politically incorrect Catholic YouTube channel to reach 100,000 subscribers. And it would just be two ring fingers in the air. Ring fingers, right? These. That means, hey, I'm married. To all of the Catholics out there that said you can't run a Catholic YouTube channel doing it the way you do it, Tim. And this is so many of them. They're like, look, the channels that are in favor of the society, they might be fringe, but they have a set, as they say on the streets. The channels that support Focus and Ascension Presents, well, they might be fake and gay, but they have a huge audience. The channels that support even sedevacantism, they might be not Catholic even, but they have an audience. What you're doing here, Tim, and now I'm just being any of the naysayers over the last 5.5 years. What you're doing here would be fashioning out of whole cloth a whole new Catholic audience. Guy, this is a channel for serious faithful yet obedient Catholics. So we follow the Pope on disciplines, even if he doesn't have the right to change doctrines, and we don't have to follow him when he tries to change doctrines. But disciplines like Traditionis Custodes, that was rough. But I said, look, we have to follow. He has the right to do it. It's a discipline. That made a bunch of people mad. I mean, everything we say here makes a bunch of people mad. The so-called trads in the American church basically drove us out of even polite trad society, where I had a prominent place theretofore. Once I published, when Steph published Ask Your Husband and I published Case for Patriarchy, because they're all feminists. When you know, and then we forge alliances with people and friendships with people that others don't like. I mean, it's just, we do it the way that the natural law dictates. And so hitting 50,000 subs was cool. Hitting 100,000 subs will be really cool. That's my personal goal. So if you want to support this channel, if you've benefited from this channel, as many people tell me they have, then subscribe to it, please. Hit the like button, leave a comment. I like cookies, will suffice. You know, get notified when we make new videos. But first, just subscribe. That's really how you can support this channel. Also, take a moment and go subscribe to the CMask channel. That's basic. When times are busy, and things are very busy for me on this channel, this May and June. Very, very busy. My patrons, know why, because I leave them secret esoteric messages on Locals and Subscribestar. I'll talk about that in a second. They know why, but when things are busy and I only have time for 2 shows in a week, well, that's on usually Monday and Wednesday. I still always do a 3rd show with the CMAS crew on the new CMAS channel. Half the time I'll hang that video on my channel because we still have a growing audience over at CMAS. Please subscribe to that channel too. Young men out there who are parish orphans and retrogrades. Do that now too. Make sure you subscribe to this channel and go subscribe to CMAS. That's basically a 2nd channel that I run with 3 of my friends. And that's the best way to support. If you're strapped for cash and you're like, I'd love to support you financially, that's the best way. Help me reach my goal of 100,000 subscribers. People like helping others to meet goals, I'm told. I don't, but I'm told you guys do. So do that, please do that. Thank you. Now, if you want to support me in financial goals, then that would be awesome. Even $5 or $10 a month goes a long way. I got kicked off of Patreon for being the most politically incorrect Catholic on the internet and not backing down on the PP issues, right? PP issues aren't just like LMNOP Homo sapien stuff. The PP issues are also functional gender dysphoria. That means men acting like women, women acting like men. So I got kicked off for all this stuff. Now I'm supported by patrons on Locals and Subscribestar. And this is a different concept. Those the people out there that watch the show, love the show, that aren't looking to support as patrons, but they just want to donate to the man here. Very flawed man before you, Timothy Gordon and his family. Most of them because they know the story of my saga of my eldest daughter in Italy. Things like extra heightened healthcare costs and all that. Well, you could do that on timothyjgordon.com, click donate. But that's different because that's donative. You don't get something in return. But Locals and Subscribestar are the way that you get stuff in return. And what you get in return is either a Locals or a Subscribestar patron. It's a little different from Patreon. It's harder to get physical copies of books and stuff in the mail, though you can contact me and say, hey, could I get a signature on a book or something like that? That's easy to do. It's not quite as convenient as Patreon, unfortunately. But what they get is we're doing a whole trilogy, LOTR, Lord of the Rings, by Tolkien, going through every single chapter with an expert, my friend Anthony, me and him, every Wednesday night. We go through one more chapter, and we're all reading the entire trilogy over the course of basically a year. Will probably be about 11 months, all in all. We're in the middle of Two Towers now, the middle book. And all of those get logged onto, a private site. Where if you join now, you want to start reading Fellowship, boom, 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 boom. You go through books 1 and 2, that's Fellowship. Books 3 and 4, Two Towers. Books 5 and 6, eventually we'll upload reading group discussions between me and Anthony and whoever tunes in live, which is usually a couple handfuls of people, 2 dozen people. And it's great fun. So you get that private access to a reading group and you read one chapter a week. It's really fun. It's really, really fun. LOTR is the best ever. Also, you get my behind the scenes, behind my house weekly updates. That's a new feature where I say, hey, here's what I really thought about my shows. Here's what the guest said behind the scenes, if it's not too private. Here's where I was. I was in Nashville this past weekend, had meetings with all kinds of important conservative media presidents and CEOs and cool folks like my buddy Michael Knowles and my buddy George Farmer. But I told it a little bit more behind the scenes, behind my house. So you get that and other free classes, kind of like the book group, if you become a patron of Locals and Subscribestar. So that's how you can help that. And then finally, you can help yourself by getting the hell out of your blue state. Get to a red state. Go to www.realestateforlife.org. And some pro-Catholic, pro-life person will help you relocate your life and your wife and your kids from a blue state to a red state. So, I already did the show on this. That Francis very clearly showed his Peronist hand by saying "frociagine." There's too much of that funny business in the seminaries right after promulgating fiducia supplicans, giving extra quote-unquote rights to the Homo sapiens so that they can get blessed together and pretend that they're, well, maybe they're not allowed to pretend they're married, but they're allowed to pretend they're a semi-legit romantic couple because they can go get blessed together instead of individually now. He also fired, before he promulgated fiducia supplicans, he fired the outgoing prefect for the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith, Ladaria Ferrer, for standing up against that document and for telling the German synodal way, we don't do this here. When they celebrated 800 churches around Germany, that kind of coupled them, SS couples. So he stood up in March 2021, got fired for so doing, and Francis literally fired him and replaced him with the German synodal way, Bishop Heiner Wilmer, as it was going to be the head of the CDF. And Heiner Wilmer was the German prelate who had been flaunting the rules in Ladaria Ferrer's face and saying, you can't control the German synodal way. We're going to bless all these little fantastic boys here in Germany in 800 churches. So he fires him, attempts to give his job to Heiner Wilmer. That doesn't work out. Somehow the Cardinals got him not to do that. It would have been too much tipping of the hand by Francis. Remember, he works by incrementalism. So instead, he just gave us Tucho Fernandez as the new CDF prefect, who the second day on the job started preparing fiducia supplicans. So I didn't buy it when Francis says, hey, I hate frociagine. Yeah, so do I, Francis. But you guys needed to see something, because that happened about 6 months ago, fiducia supplicans. A lot of you guys have shorter memories, and you needed to see something more recent. Okay, well, just 2 days ago, he makes this elevation of these three ideologically light in the loafers boys to the CDF, the Holy Office. I'm going to go back to calling it the Holy Office because Francis calls it the DDF. I think that's dumb. The CDF is kind of lame anyway. The Holy Office sounds based. But so this first lad, happy lad, who loves Homo sapienism, and for it was rewarded with an elevation to the Holy Office by Papa Francesco. Here's an old NC Register article that gives you a little more detail. This is the one linked by Penn. I'll read the important parts for you. Pope Francis taps... Oh, wow. Pope Francis... Okay, I won't say... Bad choice. Pope Francis chooses a like-minded Portuguese cardinal to head the new dicastery for culture and education. Cardinal Jose Mendonça is a published poet who's a poet. Did that give it away or what? He's a published poet whose priestly service is centered on cultural dialogue and education as well as ministry to Homo sapiens. A poet who loves Homo sapienism. But can you imagine that?
Shocking.
Pope Francis is chosen to head the Vatican's newly merged Department for Education and Culture. Now, this is in the past. This is almost 2 years old. Because now this guy's no longer in the particular dicastery named in this opening sentence. Now he's in the Holy Office, king of all the 11 dicasteries. Pope Francis is chosen to head the Vatican's newly merged Department for Education and Culture, a Portuguese poet close to Francis's thinking, but who has also been criticized for sympathizing with heterodox approaches to Homo sapienism and allying himself with a radical feminist Benedictine sister who promotes abortion and same-sex matrimony, marriage. Cardinal Jose Tolentino Calaca de Mendonça. These guys can't be serious with these names. He's 56, a native of the Portuguese island of Madeira, was appointed September 26th to head the Dicastery for Culture and Education, a new curial department that brings together the former Congregation for Catholic Education and Pontifical Council for Culture. The two dicasteries were merged as part of the Roman Curia's new apostolic constitution, Predicate Evangelium. Preach the gospel, which Pope Francis says is a mortal sin, right? He says if you convince another of your faith, convince them another of your faith intellectually, it's a mortal sin against ecumenism or something like that. According to the Constitution, as prefect, Cardinal Mendonça's tasks will include working with bishops worldwide to promote the teaching of the Catholic religion in schools. That just means propaganda. Worse propaganda than that shit I grew up with and you grew up with in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. So that's what it means to promote the teaching of the Catholic religion in schools. That means the post-conciliar nonsense, anti-gospel, anti-Catholicism. And also his job is ensuring that the integrity of the Catholic faith is safeguarded in doctrinal teaching. Yeah, right. That means that the integrity of propaganda is safeguarded against doctrinal teaching. Over against doctrinal teaching. He will also be tasked with developing the fundamental principles of education regarding schools, Catholic and ecclesiastical institutes of higher education and research. As of 2020, Catholic universities number around 1,500 worldwide, while Catholics, I don't know why I'm reading, that's boring. Cardinal Mendonça will also be in charge of promoting the church in the world of culture, showing a preference for dialogue as an indispensable tool of true encounter, so that cultures may become ever more open to the gospel, as likewise the Christian faith towards them. That's obviously not what it's for. Encounter means talk to heterodox people, and whereas before the church has for 2,000 years says, well, let's not talk to the strictly heterodox, there's no point. Francis, using Jesuitical casuistry, says, let's talk to them and study them. Let's form study commissions. Let's form a study commission on, I don't know, communion for the divorced and civilly remarried. We just want to study it. We don't want to give communion to the divorced and civilly remarried. Remember when he was saying that shit in 2013 and 2014? Guess what he did with the study commission? You're never going to guess. He studied that stuff in order to give communion to the divorced and civilly remarried.
Because everyone knows you spend a lot of time, effort, and money on things that you don't do anything with.
Right. I studied having the lights on and off at the same time in the same way in this room for 25 hours yesterday, because it's you study impossibilities so hard. That's just what you do if you're Catholic under Pope Francis. That's casuistry, and he did it with the SS couples and fiducia supplicants. Let's just study them. Let's just study Homo sapiens. Gross, dude. Why do you want to study Homo? And now he's doing it. He's been studying female deacons for since the Amazon Synod. Remember, they're all set to announce deaconesses in October 2019, but they were getting ready for. By the time he was writing that post-apostolic or that apostolic post-synodal exhortation, COVID had broken out, so he tabled it. But now he's going to do that. Everything he says he wants to study, he goes and does. So this guy Mendonça, who comes to the Holy Office from the Dicastery for Culture and Education, Cardinal Jose Mendonça, published poet. He loves the Homo sapiens. He loves them hard. And he loves him some ministry to Homo sapiens. He just enjoys it. That's just for him, though. That's not for them. It's a little treat for Jose. That's him. Cardinal Marcello Semeraro, former prefect of the Dicastery for the Causes of the Saints, now a member of the Holy Office, has reportedly turned his diocese into the Italian capital of the Catholic Homo sapien movement. Let's turn to another outside article, the one that Sir Edward linked to on Daily Compass. Semeraro and Co., the Jehé lobby in pursuit of power at St. Peter's. It's written by Riccardo Cascioli. As a slap in the face for those who still want to believe that the Pope is not actually in favor of civil unions, Francis shows his indifference by his choice of new cardinals. This is 4 years ago. 3 are well known for their positions openly in favor not just of SS unions, but the legitimization of Homo sapienism. Wait, this sounds like it's not so old. Why does it say the date here is October 30th, 2020? That's odd. This sounds like what just happened. It's a little moving to see Italian newspapers, social media, church prelates, and other major lay leaders in the church try so hard to explain, against all evidence, that the Pope did not really mean what he said in support of Homo sapien civil unions, recorded in the now famous docufilm Francesco, screened last week in Rome at a film festival. Okay, good. This is good. Because he did that in 2020. Remember what he said? Hopefully they quote it directly. I'm pretty good with remembering direct quotes, but it's a long one. He said in that film, Francesco, in 2020, I think that worldwide, we need worldwide global legislation that enables them to have civil unions. The Vatican media's sacred silence was not enough to quell confusion. Their silence was complicit with that of the Pope's own spokesman, who said nothing to deny the civil union interpretation, which hit international headlines minutes after the film's screening. Reconstructing the Pope's prior position on this issue was of no help either. Auger, as the Argentinian bishop, confirmed to the Daily Compass, who witnessed it all directly. Auger gives an account that demonstrates that Pope Francis's position had actually coincided with certain bishops in Italy who stood in favor of legalizing SS civil unions. One of those Italian bishops was number 2 appointment as of 2 days ago to the Holy Office. For those who refuse to see or hear, not even the plainest of hard evidence is enough to convince them otherwise. Hence, Pope Francis, while utterly disregarding the huge fuss this has made, has decided to go right ahead by promoting, as new cardinals, major church figures who support the Jehé agenda. At least 3 of the 13 new cardinals in the upcoming consistory are clearly not only in favor of legally recognizing Homo sapien civil unions, but the normalization of Homo sapienism altogether. And above all, are extremely committed to promoting the LMNOP QRST cause inside the Catholic Church. The most prominent among them is, no doubt, the Bishop of Albano, Marcello Semeraro. Let's hear about him. He turned his diocese into the Italian capital of the Catholic Jehé movement. Every year, Albano hosts the Forum of Italian LMNOPQRST Christians. The forum's aid is precisely to make Homo sapienism, and not just persons with Homo sapien tendencies. You know, they drink too much tea. They weigh lightly against their loafers. Were fully accepted into the church. It aspires to change the Catholic Catechism, Semeraro. Now, good, he's in the Holy Office. Now he wants to change the Catechism. There's no relationship between membership in the Holy Office and the promulgation of Catechism. We haven't had a catechism for all of 30 years, 31 years. Hadn't had one for about 450 years before that. And if they're going to try, they just got 3 guys into the Holy Office. It aspires to change the catechism and argues for a rereading of sacred scripture according to a rainbow ideology. This guy, Semeraro, number 2, that Francis just nominated. It is not surprising, therefore, that as soon as he received news of his appointment to the cardinalate, Semeraro said he supported reasons for civil unions while referencing the Pope's interview. Meanwhile, Father Aristide Fumagalli, the Italian version of Father James Martin, has just released his new book, L'amore possibile, that's possible love, Homo sapien persons and Christian morality. The preface author was none other than Semeraro himself. What's more, during the January 2016 Italian edition of Family Day, Semeraro openly supported the legal recognition of Homo sapien civil unions while excluding children's adoption by Jehé couples. Why, man? Why not go whole hog? Semiraro's position is not surprising at all. It is consistent with his personal history and rapid rise within church leadership. Appointed Bishop of Oria in 1998 by JP2. Oh, shocker. John Paul II appointed all of these robo-leftists into the episcopate and the cardinalate? What? I thought he was John Paul the Great. Yeah, he did. All of the worst guys are JP2 appointees. No, people who are running an organization are not in charge of it. They're not responsible for their decisions. They just get credit for the good things that might accidentally happen. The J2P2s never cease to amaze me. So he's appointed by JP2 and promoted to the Diocese of Albano in 2004, despite insidious rumors about a relationship with a priest. Oh, that's a shocker. He had a relationship of a Homo sapien nature, it's rumored, with a priest. However, it wasn't until Pope Francis's election that his power inside the Vatican would grow enormously. Pope Francis knew Semiraro well because he had worked closely with him during the 2001 synod. You always forget that JP2 ran a couple synods. A couple in the 70s, one or two in the 80s, one or two in the 90s, and this last one, the 2001 synod. I always forget this. I always thought Francis basically reified it from the bowels of a couple of obscurantist lines of conciliar documents of Vatican II. But JP2 did it too. He loved Vatican II. He called it new birth date for the church. So in April 2013, Francis immediately called him to serve as secretary to his Council of Cardinals, which Francis had formed to advise him on reforming Vatican Curia. And now, just within the last 10 days, and this is 4 years ago, Semiraro was appointed prefect for the Congregation for the Causes of Saints, replacing Cardinal Angelo Becciu, who had fallen into disgrace, even though Becciu was sort of falling into disgrace, falling on a sword for Francis with Banco Ambrosiano audit funds. Remember that whole thing? Then he was made a cardinal, and now, of course, 4 years later, he transfers, intra-curial transfer. He's now in the Holy Office, the highest of all the curial dicasteries. Whew. Lord have mercy. And then the third of these three appointees I know better, Archbishop Bruno Forte, the main pro-Homo sapien guy at the first two synods of Francis's in 2014, 2015. What did he do there at the synods on the family? Well, at the Relatio, the midterm report, there were these conscience-shocking lines of, we must accept the positive aspects of Homo sapien relations. So positive. Must accept the titillating aspects. That article ain't coming up. Why is this article not coming up? I wanted to read the embedded article. So this is from October 2014, October 13th of 2014. The end is nigh. October 13th, 2014. Catholic Synod, Vatican Family Review signals shift on Homo sapienism. This is like nearly 10 years ago at the end of this summer. And so many of the Pope-splainers are like 20-year-old guys that were like 10, 11 years old when Francis showed us who he really was at the 2014 and 2015 synods. Senior clerics taking part in a review of Catholic teachings on the family have called on the church to adopt a more positive stance on Homo sapienism. This was like 1.5 years into Francis's pontificate. And people who were watching were shocked. Everyone aside from me, I was watching, but I wasn't shocked. Monsignor Bruno Forte was General Assembly of the Synod of the Bishops. He was in charge. Attitude of the church to welcome persons who have Homo sapien orientation. That's what he said. A preliminary report called a Relatio was written by bishops during a Vatican Synod, said Homo sapiens had, quote, gifts and qualities to offer. They think they have stuff to offer one another. The report does not challenge the church's long-held opposition to same-sex marriage, but some gay rights groups hailed it as a breakthrough. Conservative groups rejected the report, one labeling it a betrayal. More than 200 bishops have been taking part in the synod since October the 5th. It was convened by Pope Francis to debate controversial issues such as abortion, contraception, Homo sapienism, and divorce. Synod on the family, right? In the mind of a rogue like Francis, a Jacobin, when you say, "Hey, let's talk family, the Catholic family," he's like, "Yeah, you mean abortion, right?" No. Okay, well, contraception at least. No, I mean that's the opposite of the family. Okay, well then Homo sapienism, like two dudes who want to hold each other's hands and more. No, that's not the family. That's the opposite of that's an unfamily. Okay, well, divorce, right? Well, that's the end of a family that the church doesn't recognize. But you tell a dastardly, subversive like Francis, let's have a twin synod on the family. Those will be your first two synods in the church. And he's like, yeah, gotcha. We'll talk all about divorce, reversing the teaching on communion for divorced and civilly remarried. We'll talk about hey guys, we'll talk about contraception and abortion. It'll be great. I love I love families. It's just, you can't write this shit. And it's been 11 years of it. Monday's report, issued halfway through the 2-week meeting, said, quote, Homo sapiens have gifts and qualities to offer to the Christian community. Are we capable of welcoming these people, guaranteeing to them a fraternal space in our communities? No. Okay. Oh, and there's the line I'm looking for was the positive aspects. Pope Francis's emphasis on concentrating upon positive rather than negative aspects of human sessuality seems to have won over many bishops attending the synod. That's weird. They paraphrase it, but that was the exact line in the Relatio. I wonder why that's not quoted in this article. His predecessor, Pope Benedict XVI, referred to Homo sapien relationships as intrinsically disordered in a Vatican document written in 1986 when Benedict was chief theological advisor to JP2, prefect of the Holy Office. Pope Francis, on the other hand, told journalists returning from a Catholic youth festival in Rio de Janeiro last year, and again, this is 2014, if a person seeks God and has goodwill, who am I to judge? Pope Francis is the first pontiff ever to have used the word gay in public rather than Homo sapiens. And then, so Bruno Forte is associated with maybe the direct language or the direct ratification of the language in the midterm report. And I know more about him than the other guys. He's been a prominent voice advocating for more inclusion and respect for homosexuality and Homo sapien rights within the church. Well, that's just dandy. You're a dandy man. This I'm reading out of the Italian. No, La Stampa. This has in a translation. Look at that. That's a handsome man, Bruno Forte. Same day, October 13th, 2014. This is La Stampa. The term marriage only refers to a union between a man and a woman. Look at this stalwart advocate of Catholic teaching. Not natural law gives the right idea, but is a term not many understand. The Monsignor points to similarities between the Synod and the Second Vatican Council. Well, that's honest. Here's a direct quote by Mr. Forte. The church does not believe that the term family can be used to refer both to a union between a man and a woman that is open to procreation and SS union. Having said this, it seems obvious to me that humans have different experiences, have rights that must be protected. Sound like Francis? I think this is Bruno Forte. The issue here, therefore, is not equating the two in all senses. This is what they do. This is what they're doing with female deacons now. Don't equate a female deacon with a male deacon in all senses, just almost all. Including in terminological terms. That's a paraphrasm, friend. Naturally, this does not mean that we should rule out looking for a way to describe the rights of people living in SS unions. It is a question, I think, of being civilized and respecting people's dignity. This is according to Monsignor Bruno Forte, the Synod's special secretary. Special. He's a special man who is a man's secretary. who commented on the relatio post deceptationem, the summary of the Synod's first week of discussions. I've never heard the full name. It's relatio post deceptationem. I just call them relatiae. Presented today by Cardinal Peter Erdo. His comment, Fortes, was in response to a question on legislation that legally protects cohabiting gay couples and was made during the daily briefing with journalists. The Hungarian cardinal who gave the floor to Monsignor Forte because he said, "He who wrote the text must know what it is talking about," added that the subject came up in the free discussions too, and some said it seems to have been missed out in these paragraphs, although at one point there's a clearer reference to the fact that there are also disordered forms of cohabitation, and the circoli minores, this is how the first synod worked. They changed it in 2015, but they were working in circoli minori, tiny little working groups. The language groups the bishops have been split into are to discuss the issue this week and later on. Later on. That means after the synod. The groups will also be making amendments to the text presented today. On this note, Monsignor Forte answered a question about whether the reference to the seed of the word and the elements of sanctification and of truth that are also to be found outside traditional marriage also applies to Jehe cohabitation and common law marriages. Here's what he said. It's going to be fascinating. Quote, "I think the document intends to find positive aspects of those relationships, bracket, wherever they are to be found, and they do exist, of course." So he does think that these things are good. Rejecting something is easy, but recognizing and giving value to all that is positive, even when dealing with these kinds of experiences, I think is an exercise in intellectual honesty and spiritual charity. So he is want to find positive aspects in recognizing and giving value to something he finds very pleasing. The notion of Homo sapien inclusion. So hopefully this show helped you to know who these three phenomenal gentlemen are. Who Francis, who hates Frocagine. Remember, he would have you believe he hates Frocagine as much as me, Tim Gordon. Doesn't shake out quite. If you really hated it as much as like based people do, then you would not be appointing Frocagines. Yeah. Thank you, Steph. Thank you, delegate from Iceland. Stephanie Flonkerton, delegate from Iceland. The half brownest. Again, in my defense. Okay, so that's the show for today. Do you need to hear more about Francis? Just get on with making the deaconesses. They're non-sacramental, so don't sweat it. Get on with it, and then we can really kind of bring the Francis discussion to a close, and then his pontificate will be brought to a close by his years drawing to a close. It's been 11 years of this. It's not going on much longer. I think he's at the point where he's so unpopular. The cardinals that he has reified, everyone knows the game. They know he was a mistake. He knows that he might later be declared an anti-pope. That's quite possible. And so it's like, well, do I keep with the incrementalism? I think at some point he was too incremental to accomplish the Lavender Mafia, St. Gallen Mafia, whatever you want to call it, goals that he was emplaced for. I think he was going really crafty the first 5 years. Came out with a Amoris Laetitia 3 or 4 years in. 3 years in. It's really, he really hoodwinked a lot of dummies in the church. And I mean, most people in the church. A lot of dummies. We're saying after Amoris Laetitia, like, oh, well, he didn't say communion for divorce and civilly remarried. Well, he said the only two sacraments that you recur, confession and communion, for adulterers. A lot of people don't know this. You could get divorced and go to confession once because it's a one-off. You got divorced, that's done. You can go to confession for it. You can't get divorced, and I just mean mainly you can non-cohabit. You can habitate in different places and sort of be doing your own thing from your spouse. What you can't do, and this has never changed, is get a divorce and then go start getting horizontal with some new person that you're calling your wife, and you gang press your whole family. You gang press them into call. This is my new wife. She's not a concubine. She's real. But Grandpa, didn't you have like 8 kids with this other lady that God recognizes your wife? No, that never happened.
She made me unhappy.
I wanted a new one. So that's what you can't do. You can get, it's a sin, but I mean, you can get divorced, or just if your spouse is a major a-hole, you can just habitate in different places with him. You just have to be celibate from here on out. And guess what, people of the book? That's what really pisses everyone off. They want to get fresh with someone new. Like, well, wait, you're telling me I don't have to habitate with my spouse? Yeah, but then who am I going to have sex with? Like myself? No, you can't do that either. You're not allowed to do that. And you're not allowed to have sex with anyone new. If you want to have sex with someone, men's and women's of Christendom, you're going to have to work out your problems with that person that you called together all of your family and friends to witness. I swear I'm going to be with this person forever. And all of those idiots out there who are getting divorces, whether 5 years later or 25 years later, are like, I didn't mean that. You guys are just funny. You're funny. I know that's politically incorrect, and that's what this show does, but you're funny to me. But it is fine if you're like, this person's changed in the marriage. I can be celibate for the rest of my life. I just can't deal with her. Like, I get it. Or she's like, I can't deal with him. Okay, fine. The church we've always had mercy and justice. The mercy is, we don't care where you go. You just can't go to Lurleen Lumpkin's house, the new broad, who's looking extra hot to you. Or like a hot discotheque Latin dancer. Women, you can't just go get sweat on by that guy just because you got a divorce. You have to be celibate. You have to be celibate. And that's the thing. And Francis, but Pope Francis changed that. Pope Francis can say stuff better and clearer than Jesus, even though Jesus says in 2 of the Gospels, Matthew and Luke, you're committing adultery if you remarry someone. And everyone's like, no, Jesus, bro, Jesus needed to think before he spoke. That's what all of these people, if you're a Francis devotee or just a divorce and remarriage person, if you get too into so-called annulment, then you're just one of these guys like Jesus really shouldn't. He should have thought more before he spoke. I'm not going to say, I can't join you there. I believe Jesus is Lord and Savior. God of the universe. Second person of the Trinity. And he says, if you get a divorce, you can't go find someone else to start doing. So, shame. Thank you. All right. So, God bless you all. God bless America. This Leviathan LMNOP dystopia. And God bless the Pope. May he someday become a Roman Catholic. Deus Vult. It's funny, it says amen.